Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take some really challenging source material stuff that's dense, maybe difficult, sometimes just overwhelming, and we try to, well, find the clarity in it all.
Yeah, navigate the complexity.
Exactly. And today, we're tackling something with just staggering scale. It's intense, and it demands, really, all our focus. We're looking at these deep, detailed sources about the Second Coming, the idea of ultimate judgment, and the creation of this final definitive order for everything.
It's quite the mission, yeah.
Yeah.
And you, the listener, you've given us these texts, prophetic, legal stretching, right from Genesis all the way through Revelation.
The whole span.
The whole thing. So our goal here isn't just like listing events. We need to be almost forensic synthesizers.
Okay.
We have to pull out the precise sequence of this cosmic upheaval, define the exact criteria for judgment, how conduct is measured, and then map out the ultimate destiny of creation, all based strictly on these writings.
And I think to really get this, we have to hold two sort of almost contradictory ideas in our heads at the same time.
Right.
On one hand, you've got this really visceral imagery. It's almost terrifying. Cosmic destruction, divine vengeance, God's sword, the winepress of wrath, the heavens rolling up like a scroll. It's huge, dramatic stuff.
Absolute epic scale.
But then, right alongside that, the same sources give us these meticulous, almost, well, bureaucratic isn't quite right, but detailed legal mechanics.
Like a celestial courtroom, yeah.
Exactly. Careful distinctions, degrees of punishment, the strict rules around forgiveness, and this really stark concept, the cancellation of grace if someone commits willful sin after knowing the truth.
It's a fascinating mix. We're jumping from, like you said, this universal battlefield where physics breaks down, straight into the fine print of a divine legal process.
It demands precision from us then, especially when
Right.
we're handling language that's obviously symbolic, prophetic.
Absolutely. So to begin, I think we have to start right at the climax.
Yeah.
The final, unmistakable return of the judge. And that's heralded by, well, a total collapse of cosmic order.
Right. Let's start there. The immediate run-up to this arrival. The sources call them portents of the end times, or maybe the Great Collapse. And we're not just talking about, political trouble or bad weather patterns here.
No, not at all. This is fundamental. It's a total physical and very visible breakdown of the structure of the universe as we know it. Reality itself stops holding together.
So how does that look? What do the sources actually describe?
Well, the prophets describe the heavens, the sky, the cosmos literally dissolving. Isaiah puts it vividly. All the host of heaven will dissolve, and the heavens themselves will be rolled up like a scroll.
Rolled up like parchment.
Exactly. And Revelation echoes that powerfully. The sky departs, it says, peeled back like a scroll being rolled away. Just try to picture that for a second. The firmament, the atmosphere, space, it's not collapsing in, it's being unmade, peeled back.
Okay, so if the sky is literally peeling back, what happens to everything in the sky? The sun, the moon, the stars?
They fail completely. It creates this terrifying darkness. The sun turns black, specifically like sackcloth, that rough, dark fabric for mourning.
Ah, okay. Symbolic too, then.
Very. And the moon, usually soft white, turns the color of blood.
Again, really stark imagery.
And Revelation makes it clear this isn't just, say, a quick eclipse. It signifies the total end of stability and light. And then you get the stars. We think of stars as, fixed, immense, permanent things up there.
Right. Distant suns.
But the texts say they start falling to earth. And the image used is unripe figs being shaken from a tree by a violent storm.
Unripe figs. So prematurely. Violently.
Precisely. The visual is key. They aren't gently drifting down. They're being forced off the cosmic branch by overwhelming force. It signals this sudden, premature, violent collapse of the universe's internal structure.
That sounds like absolute chaos. Undiluted chaos. And this celestial meltdown, it's paired with immediate terror down here on Earth, right?
Yes, corresponding physical terror. The sources mention a great earthquake. But again, think scale, not a local tremor. So profound that mountains and islands are physically moved out of their places. The whole geography of the planet is instantly reshaped by this seismic violence. Land masses, the idea of stable ground, gone. Obsolete.
And this leads to what I find one of the most striking human reactions in the text. Revelation describes it in detail, and it's not just, random panic. It's everyone, right up to the top.
Absolutely everyone. The text lists them deliberately.
Yeah.
Kings, generals, the rich, the powerful, free people, enslaved people, they're all equally terrified, equalized by sheer desperation.
And what are they doing?
They're hiding in caves among the rocks. But crucially, They're not just trying to escape the earthquake or the falling stars. They are actively begging the mountains and rocks to fall on them.
To crush them. Why?
To hide them. That's the critical word. Hide them from what?
Not from the disaster itself.
No, they're hiding from the presence. From the face of the one seated on the throne, it says, and from the wrath of the Lamb.
That specific phrase, the wrath of the Lamb. The gentle symbol of sacrifice, now the source of overwhelming terror.
That's the terror, exactly. It's the moment all worldly power, all human hierarchy, just completely evaporates in the face of absolute divine presence. They'd rather be crushed by rocks than face that.
Wow, okay, so that terrifying prelude brings us right to the arrival itself, the return of the Judge and King.
And this appearance is definitive. It's universally visible. The texts insist he comes on the clouds and every eye will see him.
Every eye. No exceptions, not just believers or people in one region.
Universal. Matthew's gospel says it, Revelation says it, and Revelation adds that detail. Even those who pierced him will see him.
That's incredibly pointed. It means those historically or even metaphorically responsible for his suffering, they're forced to witness his ultimate triumph.
A forced reckoning. And the response of humanity. All the tribes of the earth will mourn or wail on account of him.
Wailing, like intense grief.
Yes, that word is often linked in the prophetic context, like in Zechariah, to the kind of intense grief you feel when mourning a firstborn son. It implies this deep, sudden, agonizing recognition of who this figure is, perhaps the one they rejected. It suggests guilt mixed with the terror of judgment.
Global forced recognition. And the sources are crystal clear about his identity, his authority.
No ambiguity. He's identified as the Son of Man, coming in the Father's full glory with all the angels.
But the legal foundation is key here too, isn't it? For the judgment aspect.
Absolutely critical. John's gospel states it plainly. The Father has committed all judgment entirely to the Son.
All judgment. So he's not just an enforcer.
No, he is the ultimate authorized judge, vested with the Father's own authority to assess, sentence, and execute. He embodies both the divine mandate and, crucially, human experience, which makes him the perfect judge of humanity.
And he arrives, as you said, ready for war and justice, not negotiation. The description in Revelation 19 is, well, it's intense.
Utterly dramatic.
Yeah.
He's riding a white horse, the symbol of pure, righteous, unstoppable conquest.
Right.
His name, his core identity, is given immediately, faithful and true, meaning every judgment, every act of war is performed in perfect righteousness. No question about his motives or justice.
And his appearance.
Terrifyingly majestic. Eyes like a flame of fire suggesting this penetrating, all-knowing gaze that sees everything. He's wearing many crowns, many diadems, signifying absolute dominion over every earthly king or power.
Total sovereignty. Then there's that unsettling detail about his clothes, clothed in a robe dipped in blood. And he's called the Word of God. That contrast. The Word, normally associated with creation, life, revelation, now appearing drenched in blood.
It's highly symbolic, yes. And the context immediately links it back to that image of the winepress we mentioned earlier. It foreshadows the solitary, violent judgment he's about to carry out. The blood isn't his own sacrifice this time. It's the blood of his enemies, the result of the judgment.
Ah, okay. The output of the winepress.
Exactly. But the final, most explicit declaration of his authority, leaving no room for doubt, is the name written on his robe and on his thigh.
King of Kings and Lord of Lords.
Can't get clearer than that. His very presence instantly nullifies every other claim to sovereignty on earth. All competing powers are rendered illegitimate the moment he appears.
That whole picture, the rider, the horse, the eyes, the crowns, the blood, that name it feels like the definitive turning point. The time for patience is over.
It absolutely signals the end of the age of grace and the beginning of the age of definitive, overwhelming, righteous vengeance. #2, the execution of divine vengeance, the winepress and the sword.
Okay, so now we move into the actual execution of this judgment. This is where that metaphorical language gets really intense. The winepress, the sword.
Right, and the sources draw a direct line from this returning judge back to specific historical acts of divine vengeance, particularly connecting him to Edom and his capital, Bozrah.
Edom? Why Edom specifically?
Edom, descended from Esau, Jacob's brother, often represents in the prophets those who should have been family, allies, but instead became persistent, treacherous enemies of God's people. Their fate becomes a kind of prototype for judgment.
Okay, so how is the judge depicted coming from Edom?
Isaiah 63 paints this picture. It asks, "Who is this coming from Edom, with crimson garments from Bozrah?" The figure answers that it is he who has trodden the winepress alone, in his fury and his anger.
Treading the winepress alone. Let's unpack that metaphor again. Treading grapes was messy, physical work, right?
Extremely messy, exhausting, visible. So the text uses it to symbolize this solitary sacri. He emphasizes a lone, definitive act of furious judgment. The grapes are the wicked, the opposition, and their lifeblood splatters his garments.
Oh, incredibly graphic.
And intensely personal. He says, "The day of vengeance was in my heart, and the year of my redeemed has come." He looked for help, the text says, but there was none. He didn't need it. His own arm brought salvation. His own fury upheld him.
So this fury results in what exactly?
Trampling the peoples, making them drunk in his wrath, and pouring out their lifeblood on the earth. It's the decisive end for the forces that opposed him and persecuted his people.
And the sources detail the specific consequences for Edom as that prototype.
Yes, Isaiah 34 goes into detail. Edom is designated as a people devoted to destruction, marked for judgment. The Lord's sword, filled in the heavens, descends upon them.
A sword again.
Yes, and it's satisfied with blood. It says, the blood of lambs, goats, rams, symbolizing their leaders and people in a great sacrifice, a great slaughter.
But it goes beyond just the people, doesn't it? The land itself.
That's the most terrifying part. The very landscape is permanently altered, rendered uninhabitable. Edom's streams turn to pitch, its dust to sulfur. The land becomes burning pitch.
Burning pitch. Forever.
The text says its smoke will rise night and day, forever. It will be a perpetual waste, never to be passed through, inhabited only by desert creatures, owls, ravens.
So not just a temporary curse or defeat, it's absolute eternal desolation.
Precisely. Edom's fate serves as this stark physical model for the kind of permanent total destruction the sources associate with the final end of wickedness. It's a tangible warning.
And there's another major target mentioned alongside Edom, right? Babylon.
Yes, Babylon. Often used metaphorically as the great symbol of global power, political, economic, and spiritual, that stands in rebellion against God.
The center of worldly corruption.
Jeremiah describes it as a golden cup in the Lord's hand, but one that made the whole world drunk and mad. It was the source of this global intoxication, confusing nations, blurring moral lines.
Leading everyone astray. And the sources give a specific reason for the payback.
Yes, Jeremiah is clear. It's the vengeance of the Lord, vengeance for his temple.
Ah, okay. So the judgment is directly tied to the desecration of the sacred, the violation of divine presence, and the oppression of his people.
Exactly. And its end isn't a slow decline. It's sudden, dramatic, absolute.
How is its end depicted?
In Revelation, a mighty angel takes a huge stone, like a massive millstone, and hurls it into the sea.
A millstone, signifying immense weight, crushing power.
In finality. As the stone sinks, the angel declares that Babylon, the great city, will be thrown down with such violence and will never be found again. Complete, irreversible termination of its power, its trade, its culture, its influence, drowned and gone forever.
Okay, so we have the targets Edom, Babylon, symbols of opposition. Let's look at the actual mechanisms of destruction. The sword keeps coming up.
It's a primary instrument,
Right.
but it's not always a literal blade. Isaiah mentions the Lord's sword being satisfied with blood, linking sacrificial ideas to judgment.
Right.
But when the rider on the white horse appears in Revelation, the sharp sword comes out of his mouth.
Out of his mouth. So his words.
Exactly. It represents the power of his command, his spoken decree of judgment. It's potent enough to strike down nations. He rules them, it says, with a rod of iron, absolute authority. But the weapon that executes the judgment is his irresistible word.
The power of decree.
Right.
Okay. And before that final battle, there's another set of judgments mentioned, the 7 last plagues.
Yes, these are crucial. They're carried by 7 angels with 7 bowls, or vials. And the text explicitly says these plagues complete God's wrath. They are the final outpouring of divine anger before the end.
So they're like a final volley before the main event.
Sort of. They're poured out specifically onto the earth, the sea, the rivers, the sun, even causing darkness and a massive earthquake. They seem designed to cripple the forces of the beast, those who follow him, and prepare the way for the final confrontation.
How do they prepare the way?
Well, one notable plague dries up the great river Euphrates.
The Euphrates. Why is that significant?
Because, according to the text, it explicitly clears the way for the kings from the east to march their armies westward for the final gathering, the final battle. It removes a major geographical barrier.
Ah, setting the stage for Armageddon, essentially.
Precisely. These plagues dismantle the opposition's world and marshal the forces for the final conflict.
Which brings us to that conflict. The war against the antagonists, all these forces, human and presumably demonic, finally gather for a direct confrontation with the returned judge. Seems unwise.
Utterly futile from the description. But they do it. The beast, that ultimate symbol of global political and military power, accepted by the world, gathers the kings of the earth and all their armies.
And their explicit goal.
The text says they assemble to make war against the rider on the white horse and his army. It's the absolute culmination of all rebellion against divine authority, the final stand.
But the battle itself, it's not really a battle, is it? It's more like an immediate sentencing.
It's instantly decisive, and the sources make a critical distinction in how the leaders are treated versus the rank and file.
Right. The beast and the false prophet, what happens to them?
They are captured immediately. The false prophet is specifically identified as the one who performed the deceptive signs, who made the world worship the beast and take his mark.
So the political leader and the chief propagandist, essentially.
The architects of the deception and rebellion. And their fate is unique and immediate. They are thrown alive into the lake of fire burning with sulfur.
Alive, not killed first.
Alive. They bypass physical death, bypass any waiting period in Hades. They are the very first occupants of the lake of fire, consigned instantly to eternal punishment.
Why this special treatment?
It highlights the principle of greater accountability for leaders, especially those who actively deceive and mislead others on such a massive scale. Their responsibility warrants immediate, ultimate judgment.
And the rest, the kings, the armies, the followers who gathered with them.
They are killed by that same sharp sword coming from the mouth of the rider, the word of judgment.
So they experience physical death.
Yes, they die physically and are presumably held in death in Hades until the later general judgment. Their bodies are left on the field.
And the text adds that chilling final detail.
Yes, all the birds of the sky are summoned to gather and gorge themselves on the flesh of the slain kings, commanders, horses, and soldiers. A graphic depiction of total defeat and dishonor. The immediate military and political opposition is completely neutralized, clearing the stage, while the final judgment for the masses waits.
Okay, so we've gone from cosmic war to this swift execution of the main antagonists. Now we need to shift gears a bit, away from the battlefield and into, well, the courtroom, as you put it earlier. The mechanics of Judgment Day.
Right. This part is incredibly important, especially for you, the listener, because it gets down to the specifics of how individual human beings are evaluated. This is where personal accountability really comes into focus.
What's the absolute baseline standard here? What's the primary criterion?
The sources are remarkably consistent and clear on this. Judgment is based on conduct, deeds, actions.
Not just belief.
Belief is foundational, as we'll see, but the evidence weight in the judgment is what people have actually done. 2 Corinthians says every person will receive judgment according to the things done in the body, whether good or bad. No exceptions.
Everyone gets judged based on their actions.
Yes. Romans says God will repay each person according to their deeds. Matthew's gospel echoes this when the Son of Man returns. It establishes perfect impartiality. The judge isn't biased. He works from the record of one's life.
Okay, deeds matter. That seems straightforward. But what about fairness? People have lived throughout history with vastly different levels of knowledge about God or specific laws. How does that work? The sources talk about law versus no law, right?
Yes, and Romans chapter 2 tackles this directly to ensure the judgment is just, based on the light someone received.
How does it distinguish?
It says those who sin without the law, meaning without access to a specific written divine code like the law of Moses, will perish without being judged by that specific law.
So they're judged by
What?
their conscience.
Exactly. The implication is they're judged based on the light of nature, reason, and conscience, what Paul calls the law written on their hearts. Their own sense of right and wrong bears witness.
Okay. And those who did have the law.
Those who sinned under the law, it says, will be judged strictly by that law. They had a clearer standard revealed to them, so they're held accountable to it. The judgment is precisely tailored to the degree of revelation someone had access to.
That makes sense. Fairness based on knowledge. So if the written Mosaic law isn't the universal standard for everyone anymore, especially after Christ, what is the ultimate governing law, particularly for those who claim to follow the judge?
That's a crucial question. The ultimate standard, especially within the community of faith, is referred to as Christ's law.
Christ's law. What does that entail? Is it a new set of rules?
It's distilled down, not into hundreds of rituals, but into one core, intense moral requirement. The command to love one another as he loved them.
Love one another. That sounds simple, but the sources treat failure here very seriously, don't they?
Extremely seriously. Failing to love, or worse, actively hating a brother or sister within the faith community is equated in John's first letter with murder. And the consequence stated is stark. It leads to remaining in death, meaning spiritual eternal death.
Wow. Hating equals murder in this context.
That's the gravity given to it. So the standard becomes both universal, everyone judged by deeds, and intensely focused for those in the know. The quality of your love for others becomes the primary fruit that demonstrates the reality of your faith. It's about relationship, not just rule following.
That shift from external rules to this internal standard of love, it implies a much deeper kind of assessment, doesn't it?
Definitely. More spiritual, less checkboxy. And this leads us directly to another really important, often overlooked concept in the judgment mechanics: degrees of accountability and punishment.
Degrees. So not everyone who falls short gets the same consequence.
Exactly. If the standard involves love and deeds, but people had different levels of understanding about that standard, the judgment reflects that difference in knowledge.
How is that explained?
There's a very vivid illustration in Luke's gospel. Jesus talks about two servants. One servant knew his master's will. He was told what to do. He understood the requirement, but he didn't prepare, didn't act accordingly.
Okay. Knew but disobeyed. What happens to him?
He receives a severe punishment. The text specifies many blows. He's held highly accountable because he knew better.
And the other servant?
The other servant did not know the master's will. He still did things deserving punishment. Ignorance isn't a total excuse for wrongdoing, but because he acted without full knowledge, he receives fewer blows.
Fewer blows, so knowledge drastically increases accountability.
Absolutely. The more clarity you have about the ethical and divine standard, the more serious the consequences for violating it. It's a profound statement about divine justice being proportional.
It makes the judgment seem less arbitrary, more calibrated.
It has to be truly just. The source commentary reinforces this. Many sins, especially those committed knowingly, lead to much punishment. Fewer sins, or those done in relative ignorance, lead to less punishment. The sentence fits not just the action, but the awareness of the actor.
And this ties into free will then. How does our choice play into whether we face severe punishment, lesser punishment, or even salvation?
The commentary is clear. The whole trajectory, salvation versus judgment, and then severe versus light punishment, ultimately hinges on the creature's free choice. Did they choose to accept God's grace when offered or reject it?
How does grace affect the punishment level?
If grace is genuinely accepted, the sources suggest it empowers a person to begin living according to that law of love. They'll naturally commit fewer transgressions against it, and they'll accumulate positive deeds fueled by that grace. Their transformed life reflects their choice.
And if grace is rejected?
If grace is ignored or persistently rejected, the person continues in disobedience, demonstrating their settled choice against God's way. They then justly face the penalty defined by their actions and, crucially, by the level of knowledge they had when they made that choice.
This leads directly to the requirement of genuine faith and conduct. Can someone just say they have faith, but live a life totally contradicting that law of love and still be okay at the judgment?
The sources are absolutely uncompromising on this point. James's letter is blunt. Faith without works, without actions that demonstrate its reality, is dead and useless.
Dead faith.
Yes. Mere intellectual agreement isn't enough. James points out even demons believe in God, and they tremble, but that belief doesn't save them.
Good point.
True. Saving belief inevitably changes behavior. It produces fruit. Jesus said you'll know them by their fruits, their actions. If the deeds are consistently wicked, the claim to faith is shown to be false by the evidence of their life.
Okay, so actions must align with claimed faith. This brings us to maybe the most challenging, theologically difficult part of these judgment mechanics. This idea of willful sin and the cancellation of forgiveness. It's mainly in the book of Hebrews, right?
Yes. Hebrews chapter 10 contains this incredibly stark warning. It's heavy stuff. How can forgiveness, once granted, be revoked?
Exactly. If you're forgiven, aren't you?
This passage targets a very specific situation. It's addressed to those who have received the knowledge of the truth. They understood the gospel, the sacrifice of Christ, the forgiveness offered, the covenant they entered. They got it.
Okay, they knew what they had.
And then it says they go on sinning willfully, persistently, deliberately. The commentary suggests this isn't about stumbling or occasional sin, which grace covers. This is describing apostasy, a conscious, settled decision to turn their back on Christ and return to a life of sin after having known the truth.
What does that rejection look like in practice? What actions trigger this?
Hebrews describes it as trampling the Son of God underfoot, treating the blood of the covenant, the very thing that cleansed them, as unholy or common, and insulting the Spirit of grace. It's an active, contemptuous rejection of the salvation they once embraced.
That's strong language. Trampling, insulting.
It is. The logic is severe. If you deliberately reject and despise the only sacrifice that can possibly cover sin after you've understood and benefited from it, then logically there's no other sacrifice left for you. You've nullified the remedy.
So, if that initial forgiveness gets canceled by this persistent, willful rejection, what's left for that person?
According to Hebrews, only a fearful expectation of judgment and the fierce fire which will consume the adversaries. The text argues that because their actions prove their initial faith was fraudulent, or at least not genuine enough to persevere, their hearts are shown to be detestable, as Titus puts it. They denied God by their ongoing conduct. Therefore, their earlier forgiveness is annulled, and they justly face the consequences, likely the severest degree of punishment because they sinned against great light. The final judgment confirms the choice they cemented during their life. #4Phi. The two resurrections and the final kingdoms.
All right, we've laid out the incredibly rigorous standards for judgment. Now we need to look at the divine timeline presented in the sources. It seems there's a definite sequence involving two major resurrections and potentially two distinct phases of God's kingdom separated by 1,000 years. This can get complicated.
It certainly can. The chronology is debated. We can start with that famous separation scene, the sheep and the goats judgment described in Matthew 25.
Right. The shepherd separates the sheep from the goats.
Exactly. All the nations are gathered before the judge on his throne. He separates them, sheep on the right, goats on the left. The sheep inherit the kingdom, eternal life. The goats are sent into everlasting punishment, the fire prepared for the devil and his angels.
Seems clear enough. But you said the timing is debated?
Highly debated. The core question is when exactly this separation happens in the overall timeline, and who exactly is being separated. There are two main views reflected in the source commentary.
Okay, what's the first view?
View 1 ties this judgment directly to the start of the Millennial Kingdom, that 1,000-year period we'll discuss. In this interpretation, the sheep are specifically the faithful believers, possibly martyrs, and those who endured the preceding tribulation, who are alive at the judge's return. They are separated from the living nations to inherit and populate the 1,000-year kingdom on earth.
So it's a judgment of the living, not the dead.
Primarily, yes, in this view. The goats would be the wicked individuals among the living nations at that time, who were judged immediately and removed, perhaps facing confinement before the final judgment after the 1,000 years.
Okay, that's one interpretation. What's view 2?
View 2 takes a much broader, more final perspective. It sees the sheep and goat separation as happening at the very end of the timeline, coinciding with the Great White Throne Judgment after the millennium.
So it includes the resurrected dead.
Yes. In this view, the sheep represent all the righteous from all ages, living and resurrected, who enter the final eternal state, everlasting life. And the goats represent all the wicked from all ages, who are resurrected for judgment and sent into everlasting punishment. It's the ultimate final sorting of all humanity.
So the difference is huge. One sees it as initiating the 1,000-year kingdom on earth, the other as concluding all things and ushering in eternity.
Precisely. And how you interpret this profoundly shapes your understanding of the nature and purpose of that 1,000-year period.
Okay, let's try to clarify the timeline by focusing on what the sources say about the first resurrection and that millennial kingdom, the 1,000 years. This seems to be a distinct event before the general resurrection.
It is described as distinct, yes. The participants are very specific. Revelation 20 identifies them clearly.
Who are they?
It mentions the souls of those who had been beheaded for their testimony of Jesus and for the word of God, and also those who had not worshipped the beast or its image and had refused to take its mark on their foreheads or hands.
So martyrs and the ultimate resistors of the Antichrist system, those who paid the highest price or showed ultimate fidelity.
Exactly. They're depicted elsewhere, like in Revelation 19, as being dressed in fine linen, bright and clean, which the text explicitly says represents the righteous acts of the saints.
And what do they do after this first resurrection? You mentioned a reign.
Yes, they came to life, it says, and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years.
Reigned over whom or what?
The text suggests they reign over the nations on earth during this period. Revelation 2 gives a promise to the faithful that they will receive authority over the nations, ruling them with a rod of iron, shattering resistant elements like pottery.
Ruling with a rod of iron sounds like strict justice.
It implies a firm, righteous rule. This seems to fulfill prophecies like the one in Daniel 7, where the saints of the Most High receive the kingdom and judgment is given to them. It's a period where righteousness reigns supreme on earth, enforced by Christ and these resurrected saints.
Okay, so if the saints are reigning, where is the main adversary, Satan, during this 1,000 years?
His confinement is a key feature of this era. Revelation 20 describes the dragon, that ancient serpent, the devil, Satan being seized, bound with a great chain, and thrown into the abyss, or the bottomless pit.
Bound and locked away. For how long?
For the entire 1,000 years, the abyss is sealed over him, and the explicit reason given is crucial, so that he could not deceive the nations any longer, until the 1,000 years were ended.
Ah, so his removal is what allows this righteous reign to happen relatively unimpeded.
It seems central to it. Removing the primary source of spiritual deception and incitement to rebellion allows for a unique period of peace and justice under Christ's rule, administered through his saints. Some commentaries suggest other high-level demonic powers might also be confined during this time.
Okay, 1,000 years of righteous rule with Satan locked away. But the text says, until the 1,000 years were ended, what happens then?
After the 1,000 years are complete, Satan is released from his prison for a short time.
Released, why?
The text indicates he goes out to deceive the nations once more, Gog and Magog gathering them for one final, massive rebellion against the saints and the beloved city.
One last gasp of rebellion.
Seems so. But it's swiftly and decisively crushed by fire from heaven. And then Satan himself is thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet already are, to be tormented day and night forever.
Okay, so that deals with Satan permanently. What follows that final failed rebellion?
That leads directly into the ultimate final judgment scene, the Great White Throne Judgment.
This is the big one then, the end of the line accounting.
This appears to be the universal judgment for all those not included in the first resurrection. Revelation says the rest of the dead did not come to life until the 1,000 years were ended.
The rest of the dead. So pretty much everyone else from all of history.
That's the common interpretation. This includes everyone who died before Christ during the church age, during the millennium, who weren't part of that first group. John's gospel speaks of two resurrections, one to life and one to judgment. This seems to be the resurrection to judgment for those who did evil.
And the process itself, how does it work at the Great White Throne?
It's depicted as an utterly comprehensive review. A great white throne appears. Heaven and earth flee from the presence of the one seated on it. The dead, great and small, stand before the throne.
And books are opened.
Yes, books plural likely recording the deeds of everyone, and another book is opened, the Book of Life.
The Book of Life, containing the names of the redeemed.
Presumably. The dead are judged according to what they had done, as recorded in the books. Death and Hades, the grave itself, and the realm of the dead give up every single person they hold. Everyone is there.
And the verdict?
It seems to hinge on two things: their works recorded in the books, and whether their name is found written in the Book of Life. If someone's name is not found in the Book of Life, they are thrown into the lake of fire.
This lake of fire seems to be the final destination for all judged evil.
It is. And significantly, after the dead are judged, the very concepts, the personifications of death and Hades, are themselves thrown into the lake of fire.
Death itself is thrown into the lake of fire.
Yes, this act is explicitly called the second death. It signifies the ultimate end of mortality, the final destruction of the enemy that held humanity captive. With judgment complete and death destroyed, the way is clear for the final state. #HagV, the new order and final destiny.
Okay, we've been through the collapse, the return, the war, the reign, the final judgment. This last section takes us to the ultimate outcome, the permanent reality that emerges, the new order and final destiny.
Right. After all the judgment and purification, what's left? What's the end game? The sources speak of a necessary destruction of the current reality first.
Destruction? How so?
Peter's second letter says the present heavens and earth are being reserved for fire, kept for the day of judgment and destruction of the ungodly. That word reserved implies it's a settled future certainty.
Reserved for fire. And the description of that fire is pretty intense, isn't it? It talks about elements dissolving.
It does. It uses almost scientific-sounding language for its time. Peter says the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the heavenly bodies or elements will be dissolved by fire, melting with fervent heat.
Dissolved. Like uncreated, not just burned up.
The language suggests something more fundamental than just a surface fire. It speaks of the very components of nature being undone. The earth and all the works done on it will be laid bare, exposed, consumed. It implies an atomic-level disintegration, perhaps, an ultimate purification or reset to make way for a state where only righteousness can exist.
That sounds terrifyingly thorough. But out of that complete dissolution, there's a promise, right? For the faithful.
Yes, absolutely. Amidst that fiery end, Peter immediately follows with a promise. But according to his promise, we are waiting for new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells.
New heavens and a new earth, that's the goal. But you mentioned earlier there's some debate about what that actually means physically.
Exactly. The source commentary highlights this key theological discussion. Is this new earth, our current planet, just radically purified and regenerated by that fire? Or is it an entirely new creation, a different place altogether, made ex nihilo out of nothing?
Okay, what's the argument for it being a completely new location, not just a renewed Earth?
That view often points to the sheer intensity of the destruction language. If the current Earth is dissolved, melted, and if we take prophecies like the fate of Edom becoming burning pitch, smoking forever as a template for the end of the wicked world system,
Then maybe the old Earth becomes part of the lake of fire, or is rendered permanently uninhabitable.
that's one line of reasoning. If the physical matter of the first creation is fundamentally undone or becomes the place of eternal punishment, then the new heavens and new earth couldn't possibly be the same globe. It would have to be a replacement, a completely new sphere of existence.
Makes sense. What about the other view? That it's this Earth, but purified and regenerated.
That perspective often emphasizes the Greek word used for new, kainos, which can mean new in quality or renewed rather than neos, which usually means new in time or origin.
So renewed and not brand new.
Right. They argue the fire acts like a cosmic refiner's fire, purging all sin, corruption, and the effects of the curse from the existing creation. The earth isn't annihilated, but redeemed and restored to a perfect state, perhaps like Eden or even better. This view emphasizes continuity, God redeeming his original creation rather than discarding it.
So the debate is about continuity versus replacement. Does it matter which view is right?
Theologically, it touches on how we view God's relationship with his creation. But the crucial takeaway for you, the listener, is that regardless of whether it's this place renewed or a new place entirely, the quality of that final state is guaranteed. It's a realm where righteousness dwells perfectly and permanently. The exact physical mechanics are secondary to that promise.
Okay, so the environment is perfect. What about the inhabitants? Let's look at the permanent state for both groups, starting with the final destiny of the wicked.
Their destiny is consistently described as the lake of fire. This is where the beast, the false prophet, and eventually Satan end up. And it's the destination for all whose names are not in the book of life.
And their state there.
The term used is everlasting punishment. Matthew's gospel contrasts it directly with the everlasting life of the righteous. Revelation describes the occupants of the lake of fire being tormented day and night forever and ever.
Tormented forever. That's hard to grasp.
It is. And the sources specify that this fire affects both body and soul, indicating a complete and conscious experience of this state, often called the second death. The key aspect is its permanence everlasting, forever and ever.
Okay. And for the righteous, what is their permanent state?
Theirs is everlasting life. But it's more than just endless existence. It involves a profound transformation.
Transformation? How so?
Paul writes about it extensively. Our current bodies are not suited for that eternal, incorruptible kingdom. So the righteous will be given new bodies, spiritual bodies, glorified bodies like Christ's own resurrected body.
Like Christ's body, imperishable, glorious.
Exactly. Free from decay, weakness, dishonor. Paul says what is sown perishable is raised imperishable. Colossians speaks of our hidden life, with Christ being revealed in glory when he appears. Philippians says he will transform our lowly bodies to be like his glorious body.
So a complete physical upgrade suitable for the new reality.
Yes. And in that state, Revelation says there will be no more death, no more mourning, crying, or pain. The former things have passed away. The focus is on dwelling with God, seeing him face to face, and engaging in joyful worship and service forever.
And the absolute final step in this entire cosmic narrative, the ultimate conclusion.
That's described by Paul as the final submission. After all the enemies have been defeated, put under Christ's feet, with the very last enemy being death itself.
Which we saw thrown into the lake of fire.
Right. Once everything is subdued under the sun, he then takes the entire perfected kingdom, the new heavens, the new earth, all the redeemed and glorified inhabitants, and he delivers it up to God the Father.
The Son hands the perfected kingdom to the Father. Why?
Paul says it's so that God may be all in all. It signifies the completion of the Son's redemptive and restorative work. All rebellion is gone, all creation is perfected and unified under the Father's ultimate authority. It's the absolute, final, harmonious state of all things. History reaches its goal. #outro.
Wow, that was quite a journey. From the stars falling apart to the final, eternal state. Let's try and quickly recap that massive timeline for everyone listening.
Okay, let's try. We started with the cosmic signs, the universe itself dissolving the portents of the end.
All right, then the dramatic, visible arrival of the warrior judge, the King of Kings, ready for justice.
His vengeance immediately targeted the main political and spiritual leaders of the opposition, the beast and the false prophet. They were thrown alive into the lake of fire, no delay.
Then Satan himself was bound, locked away for 1,000 years.
And during that time, the saints who were part of the first resurrection began their millennial reign with Christ, ruling the nations on earth with that rod of iron.
After those 1,000 years, Satan had a brief release, a final rebellion which was instantly crushed.
And that led straight to the great white throne judgment. This was for the rest of the dead, everyone else, judged according to their deeds, their lives' record.
The books were opened, the book of life consulted. Those not found in it joined the beast, the prophet, and eventually Satan in the lake of fire.
And crucially, death itself and Hades were also thrown into the lake of fire, the second death, ending mortality.
Then the final stage. The old heaven and earth, corrupted by sin, were dissolved by fire.
Making way for the promise. The new heaven and the new earth, the permanent home of righteousness, where the redeemed live in glorified bodies.
And the ultimate conclusion. The Son delivering this perfected kingdom to the Father so that God becomes all in all.
That's the whole timeline, distilled from the sources.
So after absorbing all of that, this incredibly detailed plan, this blueprint for the end of history and the start of eternity, what's the takeaway? What does this mean for you listening right now, today?
Well, the sources themselves make that connection explicitly. Peter, right after describing the heavens dissolving and the elements melting, asks the direct question.
Which is?
Since all these things are thus to be dissolved, what sort of people ought you to be in lives of holy conduct and godliness?
Brings it right back to the present, to our lives.
Exactly. The knowledge of this detailed, inevitable future, including the judgment based on deeds and the law of love, isn't supposed to just be fascinating information or paralyze you with fear. It's meant to intensely focus your present life.
How so?
By urging you to live now in a way that reflects the reality you know is coming and the standard by which you know you'll be judged. It gives profound clarity and purpose to daily choices, conduct, relationships, particularly that law of love.
That's the immediate challenge then. Live now in light of that ultimate reality. But let's end with one final thought, maybe a slightly unsettling one, that comes out of the tensions in the timeline we explored.
Okay.
We read that the judge, the Son, after ascending, sat down at the right hand of God. And the letter to the Hebrews says, he is waiting there.
Waiting. Waiting for what?
Waiting until his enemies should be made a footstool for his feet. He's actively waiting for the appointed time.
Okay, that makes sense. Divine timing.
But there's another layer to that waiting, suggested in Revelation. Remember the souls under the altar, the martyrs crying out, "How long, O Lord?"
Yes, asking for judgment and vengeance.
And they're told to wait a little longer. Why? Until the full number of their fellow servants and brothers, who were to be killed as they had been, was completed.
So there's a specific number of martyrs that needs to be reached before the final acts of judgment can proceed. A quota.
That's what the text implies. An invisible celestial count must be fulfilled. So here's the provocative thought for you, the listener. What does it mean for our world right now that the ultimate divine authority is not just passively waiting, but actively restraining that final judgment, that final vengeance, until a predetermined number of people suffer martyrdom for their faithful witness? This tension between God's absolute power and his measured, patient waiting, tied apparently to human suffering and fidelity, reveals something profound.
It suggests the cosmic clock isn't just ticking based on prophecy or angelic schedules.
But it's also intimately connected to the completion of human faithfulness, even unto death. The timing of the end seems bound up with the patience required for witness to run its course.
That is a powerful thought to reflect on. That divine timing is interwoven with human cost and commitment. Thank you for joining us on this. Well, this very deep dive into these challenging texts.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening. Until next time.